over to one of the greatest Toastmasters in the world. He just joined, I don't know, it seems like less than 6 months ago, and he has stepped up to the plate and knocked the ball out of the park. So since he's done that, everybody put your hands in the air and give a round of applause for Arturo.
Hey, thank you so much, Mimi. Thank you, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm all about growth. I love growing. I love growing my skills, me as a person, and I really enjoy just being here with everyone so we can all grow together. So I do look forward for a value-packed meeting, and I want to start out with our functionaries. So let's see here. Our out counter I see is not here yet, so we'll just skip him for now. So our timer, Mr. Miguel, will you be our timer for today? I haven't got confirmation from you.
I am the timer for today. I will be keeping track of speech length, keeping track of evaluation length, as well as tracking, what was it? The table topics. So I've got my little signals. I'm still kind of running around, but I will pop back in and let you guys know what I've got to signal. Green is going to be for you hit the time, your minimum time. Yellow means that you're going to be coming up a little closer, and red means you are at your time limit, whatever that's going to be, for your speech, for your table topics, or for your evaluation. Mr. Table Topic, or sorry, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Miguel. And before I forget, this is really important that I had to share, but Sheila, her speech for today, she will be going between 9 and 12 minutes today, Mr. Timer.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And then, so our next functionary looks like is Mimi. Mimi is taking on a few different roles today, so thank you so much. Without her today, I don't know. Janet and Sheila, Janet and Mimi, huge help today. Thank you so much for taking on these different roles, multiple roles today. So Mimi will be our grammarian / wordmaster. Mimi, could you explain your role today, please?
Yes, today I am putting on my listening ears, and I am listening for good uses of grammar and poor uses of grammar. And our word for the day is predicate. To assert, affirm, state, imply, base, or found something on something. Predicate. And my sentence is, we would love to be making a great mistake to predicate our efforts and activities on the vagaries who might happen to be leading another party. So predicate. I want to hear it. I'm listening, and I'll be listening to you.
Thank you, Mimi. I actually missed a little bit of the definition. Could you please go a little bit more in depth? Because I would like to use it today.
Yes.
During our
so
meeting.
To predicate is to assert, to affirm, to state, imply, or base or found something on something. So predicate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mimi. And then let's see who our next functionary will be for today. Let's see here. Mr. Marty, I'm going to ask you last minute here. Are you okay being our out counter for today?
Sure.
I know it's last minute.
No, I'm just kidding. No, it's all good.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Marty, as our out counter, what will you be doing today?
I will be counting filler words that people put in together. So the words that people use to kind of fill in the gaps in their speeches. That's what I'll be doing. So we'll be watching for those words.
Thank you so much, Marty.
That was an example of what I'll be watching for right there.
Thank you so much, Marty. I know it was last minute, but I really appreciate you.
No, I know. It's all good. Appreciate you reaching out.
Let's see. And then our next functionary will be our general evaluator, which is again, Mimi.
Hello again, everyone. Long time no see. Today I'll be your general evaluator. So I will generally be evaluating the meeting. How did it start? How did it finish? And how did the things go in between? How did the evaluator do? I'll be looking for these things in accordance to everything else. So don't predicate this role on my other roles. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Mimi. All right. So I forget, Janet, do I introduce you as our evaluator?
You would, and then I will go ahead and tell what I'm going to do as the evaluator. Then you will give the introduction. And if she didn't give you one, you get to make one up.
Okay.
And then she'll give her talk.
Okay, sounds good. So I don't introduce you yet, right?
You introduce me now, and then,
Okay.
and then I'm not introduce, but you give me the floor, and then I give it back to you, and you introduce with an introduction about Sheila.
Just to make sure I understand, I'm going to jump in. So Sheila's speech then would be predicated on you being introduced ahead of that. Is that correct?
That is correct. We will predicate Sheila's talk on my evaluation explanation, which is predicated on the introduction by Arturo of me, and then back to Arturo.
Very nice. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, Miss Janet. So looks like you will be our evaluator for our first speaker. What will you be doing today?
Sheila has asked me to watch out for her sewing class. So she has sew as one of her filler words, and that's one of the pieces that she would like to correct or ameliorate. So I've predicated my evaluation on ameliorating the issues that she's concerned about. I will also be giving a generalized evaluation in terms of how I understood her talk and the common evaluation that we use typically when we have a meeting in person at Ent, which we do. If you remember to do it, we often take 1 minute on the clock for people to write up a few words to help Sheila with her talk, if that makes sense. That said, I return the floor to you, Arturo, to introduce our speaker.
Sounds good. Thank you for predicating what Sheila will be working on today on her speech. So Sheila, a little bit about Sheila. Sheila has been an attorney for 15 years, and she switched her career focus to compliance when she joined Ent Credit Union almost 4 years ago. I wasn't aware about that. I think that's really cool. Right now, what she's doing right now currently at Ent is she is a regulatory compliance counsel. And then so today her speech is a trial run of a presentation for tomorrow. For tomorrow's monthly Operational Risk and Regulatory Compliance Committee. So thank you so much, Sheila. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Today I will be covering 2 topics. And the first topic is the recent trends in the CFPB's or the Bureau's enforcement actions holding individuals liable as well as their business entities. And second topic, I will provide an update on the Bureau's use of the abusiveness prong under the unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts and practices enforcement actions. First, the Bureau has statutory authority under the Consumer Financial Protection Act, the CFPA, to hold 3 types of entities liable in connection with their UDAP enforcement actions. The first category is the covered person, which includes the business entities that offer or provide consumer financial products or services. The second type is related person, which includes officers, directors, and employees with managerial responsibilities. They also include the shareholders of the covered person. And the third category is the service provider who provide material service to the covered person. Recent Bureau enforcement actions include the business entity and also their principals and as defendants. And this isn't an entirely new development, but it seems to be increasing with the new Bureau administration. In 5 of the 8 enforcement actions since January of this year, the Bureau has named individuals as related persons in their enforcement actions. In the Nexus Services enforcement action, the Bureau included the executive vice president of the entity and alleged that this individual had significant managerial responsibilities over the company. And the Bureau alleged that this individual was aware that its customers were owed refunds, but he willfully and knowingly failed to remit those refunds that were due the customers. Another example is in the First Alliance lending enforcement action. The Bureau included the president of production and the president of capital markets. And both of these presidents were materially involved with the operations of the business, but they also were actively involved in the actual unlawful acts. They approved the company's business model and employed and used unlicensed loan consultants and mortgage loan originators to originate the loans for the company. Currently, these enforcement actions have been against small, closely held corporations and their executives. In one enforcement action, the entity had to pay around $1 million and the executive only had to pay $2,200. So the fines against the individuals currently are not large, but under the new Bureau leadership, because they're being a little bit more aggressive than the prior administration was, the Bureau could expand these enforcement actions to larger entities, and the fines against the individuals could be larger. And I will continue to monitor these types of enforcement actions in this regard. Second topic, the NAFCU, which is the National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions, they published an issue brief on UDAP earlier this month, and they reviewed the Cordray error Bureau enforcement actions and reported their observation and forecasts of what credit unions can expect on a going forward basis from the Bureau on the abusiveness. The Bureau has relied on the statutory framework of the Dodd-Frank Act and its definition of abusiveness in its allegations. If an act or practice first materially interferes with the ability of the consumer to understand a term or condition of the financial service or product, or takes unreasonable advantage of the consumer's lack of understanding of a material risk, cost, or condition of the financial product or service, the consumer's inability to protect their interests when selecting or using the financial product or service, or 3, the consumer's reasonable reliance on the covered entity to act in the interest of the consumer. Well, what is meant by material interference? Well, as an example, in the NDG Financial Corp enforcement action, this enforcement action against NDG, which is a payday lender, lacked the legal authority to collect on its loans because it failed to comply with state licensing and usury laws, making those loans unenforceable. So the Bureau alleged that the lender's efforts to collect materially interfered with the consumer's ability to understand that they weren't legally obligated to even repay those loans. What does it mean to take unreasonable advantage of a consumer? Unreasonable advantage isn't formally defined, so that gives the Bureau broad discretion of making those to claim almost any act or practice takes unreasonable advantage of the consumer. And again, it's under those three theories that I mentioned: the consumer's lack of understanding, the consumer's inability to protect their own interests, and the consumer's reasonable reliance on the covered person. The Bureau alleges that a creditor is taking unreasonable advantage of the consumer's lack of understanding when it feels the creditor misrepresents or omits a term or condition that relate to the material risk, cost, or conditions of the product or service. And they find abuse when an important term is not disclosed properly. In the Fort Knox National Company enforcement action, Fort Knox omitted a material term by failing to disclose the fees that it charged for its services, nor were those fees provided on the members' periodic statements. In this action, the Bureau found abuse because the company omitted the information, i.e. the fees that it charged, that would help the consumer understand the material risk, cost, or condition of that financial service product. Inability of the consumer to protect their interests. In the Freedom Stores enforcement action, Freedom Stores contained a forum selection clause in its contracts. And a forum clause is just, it provides where you can file a lawsuit. The Bureau found this oppressive. The Bureau felt that most borrowers didn't have the ability or opportunity to review the contract before signing, and were wholly unaware of the existence of that clause. And even if they had been aware of that clause, they had no negotiating power to either change the forum state or remove that clause entirely. And in most instances, the borrowers didn't sign the contract in the state that had been selected by Freedom, and the Bureau felt that Freedom had selected that particular state because it was likely to produce default judgments and lead to garnishments, as most of the borrowers were far away from the forum state, and the Bureau deemed Freedom's contract as oppressive, which equated to being abusive to these borrowers who are mostly service members. What does reasonable reliance mean? The Bureau has consistently found it abusive where consumers reasonably rely to their detriment on the representations made by the companies. When consumers rely on the company's representations and then the company fails to provide the benefits that they stated they would provide, that's where the Bureau finds and alleges abuse. The Bureau's position is, if proper disclosures had been made, no reasonable consumer would have made the decisions that they made or believe that the institution was acting in their interests. And therefore, the Bureau will cite a violation of abusive action. As an example, in April of this year, the Bureau filed an action against Settle It, which is a debt settlement company, and they alleged that Settle It represented to consumers that it would work in their interests when it was negotiating and settling their debt. However, Settle It had financial connections with two of the lenders that were creditors of some consumers. So the Bureau alleged that Settle It engaged in self-dealing when it steered those consumers to its financially connected lenders. And in this case, the allegations of abuse centered around Settle It's creation of a reasonable reliance by the consumer that it was acting in their interests to protect the consumer's interest and failed to disclose their Settle It's connection with the lenders. So the patterns that are evolving in abusive enforcement actions: material interference with the consumer's ability to understand the term or condition arises where, had the creditor been given full disclosure of a material term, no reasonable consumer would have taken the action that they did. The Bureau is finding that act or practice takes unreasonable advantage of the consumer or the consumer's lack of understanding of a material term when the disclosures inadequately disclose a material term. It also finding a reasonable advantage if the consumer's inability to protect their interests, one, when the contract term is oppressive, or two, when the institution engages in aggressive or predatory tactics. And third, the consumer's reasonable reliance on the statements made by the creditors when the creditor misleads the consumer and fails to provide full disclosure. So these enforcement actions, again, reiterate the importance that to reduce UDAP risk, disclosures must be clear, conspicuous, and all material terms must be disclosed. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Back to you.
Thank you, Sheila. I really respect how you're able to navigate through the world of compliance, because there's definitely a lot of vocab that if you don't know it, sounds like if you don't understand the vocab in the compliance world, you can easily get lost. And I really respect how you're able to just navigate through all that. So thank you so much. Let's put 1 minute on the clock. And if we want to give some feedback to Sheila, Mr. Timer.
And that's 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. The next part of our meeting will be our table topics. And today, our table topics master is Janet Sellers. Janet, take it away.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me just fine. Appreciate it. Today, we are going to take a trip to Hollywood or any other place that you happen to like. I will tell you how I started with this idea. I was in a building going to the 6th floor with a friend for her specific purpose in Los Angeles, actually in Hollywood area. And on my way back out and down, I rode 6 floors with a man named George Burns. I think he was probably 97 at the time. Very famous comedian, wonderful guy. And he's talked with me so easily. He had great timing with talking to me and enjoying me. And he said, "Are you an artist?" And I said, "How did you know?" And he said, "Well, you're holding a sketchbook and a pencil." And he was so hilarious and so much fun. And then my floor came, it was floor 1. I said, "Are you getting off here?" And he said, "No, we have a couple more to go to the parking lot." And I said, "Darn, I wish I had more to go. I want to talk to you some more." He was so nice and so easy to get along with. So I thought today, what I would do is choose people and ask them specific questions. So we'll start off with Miguel. Miguel, you're in an elevator with your favorite musician. Who is that and what are you going to talk with them about? Ready, go.
In the elevator with one of my favorite musicians. I think at this point, kind of where my curiosity has me is one of my favorite musicians is a gospel pianist. He is more of a teacher. He spends a lot of his time kind of teaching the theory that he's worked with, and he's just a fascinating person. I'd probably be talking with him a lot about piano technique, his different approaches, just because the way that he constructs chords, the way that he puts his scales together, I think is so incredible. And one of the things I would really like to ask him is advice for constructing my own chords, constructing my own arpeggios and modes and different inversions, only because the way I've seen him work, I don't know what it is. I don't know how tall he is. I imagine he's a very tall man, because when he plays piano, he can cover keys and all these things that I need to like use my elbow and knees for. And I'm thinking about training like a pet hamster, just like to stand on certain keys to help me out with some of these because it just doesn't work for my hands. So it's just so great to see how he does it and the beautiful way he puts things together. I'd probably just, even now, I can talk with myself about this own subject, but I would probably spend a lot of time talking about music theory, how he constructs, and the way he sees music. But that is my time. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you very much. Mimi, you have gone over the Rainbow Bridge on a special transporter, and you're in the elevator with Jim Rohn. What are you guys talking about?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that question, Madam Table Topics Master. So I am definitely a Jim Rohn fan. Like, he's one of my mentors in my head, because I believe that we are an average of the 5 people that we spend time with. So I hang out with Jim Rohn on a regular basis. So when I get on the elevator, I'm be like, long time no see. Where have you been all my life? So Jim Rohn is one of the top motivational speakers who have graced the earth. He is down to earth. As I would say in my terms, he keeps it 100. So he doesn't really sugarcoat things. And he has a way of breaking down metaphysical concepts in a very palatable way that anybody can understand. One of his favorite things that he says is that when it's talking about dying or living, is that one thing about life, you're not going to get out here alive. That's how he talks. He's got a Southern twang, so that's probably why I like him as well. But another thing that I really walked away with is his perspective on wanting to have a secure life, looking for security. And if he says that if you're looking for security, well, then you go sit in the corner and put a cover over your head, and we'll bring you 3 meals a day, and you'll live to 100, very safe, and we'll keep you safe. So what he's really saying is that you got to get out there, and that you have to take risk and be who you are and do what you came to do almost unapologetically, because I feel like what he does is presents information in an unapologetic form that I just love. So thank you so very much for that question, Madam Table Topics Master.
I figured that would amp you up. Marty, here we go, your elevator speech. Now that you've been in Toastmasters, you're a DTM, you're expert at quick little things like an elevator speech. I'm going to give you the option. Who are you talking to in that elevator, that alive or dead? Because you're in a realm of no time. Who is it you're talking to, and what are you talking about?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. This is actually an easy conversation for me. Who would I like to talk to? First of all, I do want to call out that I think we have a new word of the day given to us by Sheila. That is abusiveness prong. I thought that was awesome, and I'm going to use it somehow, somewhere. Some of you might know, one of my sons passed away last year, and it was unexpected, and it was a very painful thing, continues to be painful for myself and the remaining family members. I certainly do not recommend that. If I had my option of talking to anybody, and quite honestly, I talk to him every day, but if I had the option of talking to anybody in an elevator, it would be to talk to my son, just to hear his voice one last time, to tell him I love him one last time, to have him tell me that he loves me one last time, to have a chance to say goodbye before it was goodbye. That would be my preference, to have one more chance to be with my son, even if it's just for an elevator ride. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Marty. I'm crying now. Tears streaming down. And that would be my thought too, of a loved one that I could hug one more time. I lost my mom 2 weeks ago. She's 101. And we all got to be in the hospital room and outside the hospital room with my daughter and her new baby standing outside the window, and they pushed the bed over so she could hear that new baby laughing.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I'm sorry for yours, but these things, you think about it, and when you hear someone else, you say, oh, I have a bigger understanding. I wish your son could have spent 101 years with you. That's what I wish. Jennifer, it's your turn to get on the elevator. And who is there for you? No one else but Walt Disney. He is in the elevator with you, and he says, Jennifer, I just read your name tag, and it has a Mickey Mouse little sticker on it. Tell me about that. What are you guys talking about?
I need to gain myself after Marty's speech. So give me just one moment here. I would talk to
someone else, and you can think about it for a second.
If we could, please.
You bet. Leave it to Marty to reach us deep in the heart and then pull our heart out and then put it back again. But I am going to ask Arturo, you get on the elevator, and who is it, living or dead, in any era of history or the future, or a person you make up? Who are you with, and what are you talking about? Can't hear you. Gotta unmute. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Got me off guard here. So if I had to pick one person, I would pick Will Smith. I would pick Will Smith because I watched multiple of his movies. One of the most common ones that comes to mind is the iRobot. I love the iRobot movie. It kind of paints me. It's a movie that I watched and I still think about every now and then because it paints me a picture of what the future may look like at some point. If you guys haven't watched the iRobot movie, it kind of paints, it's pretty much what life would be like when robots pretty much take over the world and they pretty much do all the functions that a lot of men and women do nowadays. But what I really like about him is he has such a great sense of humor. I was just recently watching a YouTube video, a motivational video on him. And I just love how he laughs a lot. He's always smiling, has a great sense of humor. And I like how he's just driven and how he shared a story when he just knew he was going to do great things at a young age. He was going to do great things at such a young age. And he talks more in detail about it. And he says he set a goal to become the best actor in the world, and he got to accomplish that. And I want to see what I can do. What tips, what advice would he give me so I can live the best life in my 20s and my 30s and forever. So that would be my person in the elevator. So Will Smith for me. Thank you.
Okay, I was going to ask you because I did not hear it garbled right when you said the name and the entire story. I was waiting for you to say the name again. And then finally said that. No. So thank you for repeating. It helps when we're on Zoom and especially in Toastmasters if you repeat certain things and then the rest of us who got blah, 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 get to hear it again and know what was going on. Thank you so much. Jennifer, how you doing? You feel talking or you? All right. So Jennifer, you and Walt Disney got in that elevator and you're going up 15 floors. So you have plenty of time to talk. We need you to unmute yourself so we can hear it because we want to hear that talk too.
Thank you for allowing me a moment. I'm going to quickly share and then I'll answer my question. My wish has been since my father passed away, the same wish that Marty has. So it kind of hit home for me, but I thank Marty for sharing that personal deepness with us. My talk with Walt Disney would actually ask him what he thinks of the Disney Corporation now and how big of a giant it is in the entertainment industry. And if he would be happy to see that Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar, and if he would be happy with it. Because I always wonder, anytime I'm at Disney, what Walt Disney would think about, he did design the theme park for Walt Disney World before he passed away, and he was an integral part in that. But we now have Hong Kong Disney, Tokyo Disney, Shanghai Disney, Disneyland Paris, how well the mouse has reached internationally. But I would like to know his thoughts on what he would think of his company if he was still alive today. The company that, as Walt Disney once said, you have to remember it all started with the mouse. How a little mouse has made one of the biggest corporations in the world. So I would just want to know his thoughts about what he thinks about his corporation now that, as I said, all started with the mouse back in 1928 and now is probably one of the biggest entertainment industries out there through Disney Plus and their films and the theme parks. So I just want to know what he thought.
Thank you so much. I would like to know what he thinks too. He lived in San Diego and a few areas really close to where I lived, and we used to see him somehow on television with kids on the merry-go-round in their backyard. And that's where he got the idea of those, was that he said kids like to have fun and they'd like to be a little bit active but have that imagination. And he started off with Oswald the Rabbit, if you know that history, and Willie, Steamboat Willie, and things like that. And as you're talking, I realized I know more about Disney than I thought I did. I thought you were my Disney expert, but apparently I'm old enough to, I started going to Disneyland when I was about 3 or 4 years old. My aunt would take us. My parents couldn't afford it. And the tickets for the ride started with 1 cent. And the e-tickets were 25 cents. And one of the things we used to say, just to cheer you all up, was that if somebody was crazy or wonderful or wild, we would say, that guy, for example, Arturo as a definite e-ticket, definitely worth the 25 cents. Miguel is a definite e-ticket, definitely worth that 25 cents. Sheila, your talk was a definite e-ticket, definitely worth my 25 cents. And I will give it back to you. Everybody think of which one you liked or felt what deserves the winner of the table topics, and you can put that in the chat to me. Hopefully I'll figure out how that works and I'll be able to tally the votes. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you so much. You're a fantastic table topics master. So the next part of our meeting. So just to summarize it real quick, looks like Miguel talked about gospel. He would want to go and talk to a gospel pianist. We got Mimi, talked about Jim Rohn a little bit. Marty talked about his son a little bit. Art, I talked a little bit about Will Smith, and Jennifer talked about Disney. Cash in those votes. So the next part of our meeting will be to pass it on to our general evaluator, and she will predicate how our functionaries did today. So maybe whenever you're ready.
I am ready. Now what I need to know is my speech evaluator, is she ready? The queen of everything. If she's ready, then we are on a go. So at this point, I would like to pass the meeting over to our evaluator of Sheila's speech today, Miss Janet Sellers. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Sheila, I am proud of you. There was one so and one and only one of. And I know that's Marty's job, but I wanted to mention that because you specifically asked me to pay attention to that. And I was rooting for you to take your pauses with breaths and live your pauses instead of fill them. And you did it. I appreciate your talk. Part of it, I thought, is this going to be over my head? And I thought, you know what? I'm going to listen and see how much I got. I got most all of it. I really appreciate that talk. It's a piece that's important on my mind because I went through some financial crises for 6 or 7 years, if not more. A lot of it had to do with very technical things that you're talking about. One of the pieces, because I'm not in your field and I'm not your audience tomorrow, I would have been nice for us as Toastmasters to know your audience. So if you had said, tomorrow I'm going to be talking about XYZ with so-and-so, that would have helped us to be the optimal audience for you. I don't know to this day or to this moment what UDAP is, and I hope you'll tell us. using letters and jargon in a talk with people who understand the jargon is very efficient. So I commend you on that. However, when you're not talking to a group that understands the jargon, it doesn't take much to throw in what that jargon is, at least at the beginning of using the jargon and then moving forward on that. So not knowing your audience for tomorrow, I don't understand it. I think you can give these kinds of talks over and over to us as Toastmasters and get a feel for your desire to speak and get more at ease at your desire to speak at these events. So please don't ignore us as your audience when you go forward with these kinds of talks. You do an excellent job. I tracked you all except for all the letters and the jargon I don't understand. So those are the pieces that I'd like to say. You did a good job breathing. I really like the fact that instead of keeping going, you said 1, 2, and 3. If it's possible, and if it's a Zoom meeting, it will help the impact of your speech to have a little more movement and look into the camera more. However, dry speeches on facts and these kinds of things don't necessarily require what Toastmasters asks of you. But I think you did a great job. I tracked it. I now know that I have not been robbed by int or abused by int. And I thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. So now we will do some functionary reports. So the first functionary that I have on my list is timer. So do you mind unmuting yourself, Mr. Timer, and let us know how did we do on time today?
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. We pull up my sheet. So fantastic job, everybody. I didn't have to pull out my red t-shirt once today, so fantastic. Sheila, your speech was 11 minutes, 26 seconds. Thank you so much for that speech. It was something that we weren't familiar with, but you explained it very clearly enough. I feel like a lot of us were able to track it. For table topics, it came in at 1 minute, 36 seconds. Mimi, you came in at 1 minute, 42 seconds. Marty, thank you again for sharing. Very, very touching. I lost my best friend earlier this year, and that's been very difficult as well. We're all with you. We love you, man. So table topics, 1 minute, 12 seconds. Arturo, table topics, 1 minute, 45 seconds. Jennifer, 1 minute, 24 seconds. And Janet Seller's evaluation came in at 2 minutes, 43 seconds. And my report comes in at 53 seconds. Madam General Evaluator, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Timer. Next on my list is Mr. Ah Counter. So Mr. Ah Counter, Marty, will you unmute yourself and let us know how did we do today?
I am honored. You know, up until just now, I had blanks for Mimi. I thank you. This whole thing was predicated on me being able to give some feedback to you. And I wasn't able to do that, Mimi, until just now. But you gave me 2 to work with, and for that, I am grateful. Arturo, well done. 1. I caught 1. Janet. Oh, this was fantastic, Janet. This was beautiful. When you were talking about watching Sheila for so's, I caught just 2 things. You said, so she has right in the middle of talking about so's for Sheila. It was beautiful. And I couldn't decide if that was intentional or not, because if it was extremely well placed. And then you went right into so I've predicated, and I thought that is just brilliant, using so as a connector to describe not using so as a connector. I don't know, again, if that was intentional or if that was a slip. I would say take credit for it on being intentional because it was beautifully woven in there. Sheila, I caught 4. And I want to echo what Janet said. That was really well done and polished. I will point out that there was a little bit of vocal fry in there. And I don't know if you're familiar with what vocal fry is. Vocal fry, it was all the rage about 10 or 15 years ago amongst celebrities. It's where you get kind of a cracking in your voice. And it's usually when you trail off a sentence. And there was a little bit of that in there mid-sentence toward the beginning or toward throughout your speech. And it happens usually unconsciously. I do it as well. I would just say, be aware of that, be conscious of it. That's all I had there for you. Miguel, nothing in terms of connector words, but I did want to point out you managed to string several sentences together with but and. I'm sensitive to that because I do it too. And I find myself, I'm doing it now. And I find myself being someone who really listens to that. And when I hear it, I then tend to notice it more, but I don't really want to call it out too much. And it's something you may want to pay attention to. You strung together a lot of sentences there. Not a big deal. Just be aware of it, that it's a tendency that you seem to have sometimes. And Jennifer, I got the big goose egg for you. Jennifer ran away. Okay, we can talk about her. Jennifer, it was terrible. There was 100 of them. It was awful. I'm just kidding. This is on YouTube, isn't it? Jennifer, great job. Didn't hear any. I listened for them and I didn't hear any. I understand that moving forward in this meeting today is predicated on me finishing this in a reasonable time. At the same time, I understand the timer is no longer tracking how I'm doing. That gives me the opportunity to just prattle on forever.
No, it doesn't.
And with that in mind,
3 minutes, 23 seconds.
Report, and I'll pass it back to the general evaluator.
I love you guys so very much. Evaluations are the best because this is where we really get to grow. And I don't know where you can go pay for an evaluation so you can become a better person before you go out in the world. So I want to thank Sheila for sharing her presentation and accepting the challenge that I gave her last week to do such, because this is what we're here for, to practice what we do out there. The word of the day was used wonderfully. I want to say that Marty used it the most, per his usual, but it was used properly every time that it was used, which is great, because sometimes we get a new word and we're not sure how to stick it in there and we stick it in the wrong place. But today it was used properly. So I want to thank you all for that. Grammar wise, a few things that I wrote down. Sheila, you said IE. And I think that's for written language only. And so when we say it out loud, we should say, for example, or in example.
I'm going to jump in and clarify there. My grammar fascist is poking through. First of all, I don't know that it's limited to written word, but even so, that's good feedback. It is a stumbling. Nonetheless, IE and EG are often interchanged incorrectly. IE means literally id est in Latin, and the translation there is put another way, or that is. So when you say IE, that means I'm not giving you an example, I'm going to rephrase it for you. EG, exempla gratia, that means for example. And that is where you say, I'm not going to rephrase it, I'm going to give you a concrete example to help you understand it better. All right. Awesome. That said, I'm going back on mute.
Think you so much. See, we learn so much here. You never know what you're going to get. We're like a box of chocolates. Now there was, I think I want to say maybe Sheila said this, I didn't put a name, but I didn't know if it was borrows or borrower. But one thing I want to encourage all of us is before we know we have to speak is drink some water and maybe even try this. Betty bit a bite of butter, because that warms your lips up and gets them to articulating words fully. Because in our regular conversation, our lips are a little lax, but when you are public speaking, they have a little more work to do. So that way the person in the back of the room or the hard of hearing person on maybe Zoom can understand what we're saying. So that's kind of a note for us all. Abusiveness prong am I saying this right? Sheila, really quick, do you mind unmuting yourself and tell me what that means?
Well, under UDAP, there's unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. So abusive is one prong of those three.
Ah, I like it. I like it. I like it.
But what is UDAP? You keep seeing UDAP, and I'm getting creative.
Yes. Can you type it in the chat box what UDEP stands for. Okay. So we can all know for sure, for sure. Yes, well, thank you so much for clarifying that. And so I like the way she used the word prong, because typically we think of a prong as some metal something, but a prong can also be an abstract idea. So thank you for using that and stretching our minds in that direction. So as general evaluator, I'm supposed to evaluate all kinds of things. But what I want to say is that today was a very fluid meeting. And I want to thank Art for that, because he does the work prior to the meeting, and you can tell that he applies himself throughout the meeting. So there was a good flow through transitions, even with our table topics master. Our table topics master started with an introduction, kind of gave us a background story of where she got today's questions. And I appreciated that, because that doesn't happen a whole lot here. So thank you for that prime example, Queen. And the last thing that I have on my list is sewing machine. I think that's what you said. You were looking out for Sheila doing a sewing machine. When you first introduced her speech, I thought that was phenomenal. So I wrote that down. And that is all I have for our general evaluation for today. We're doing well on time. I think if we hurry up, and if I shut up and pass the meeting over to our Toastmaster, he can close us out. And then I have a little business to take care of with you for the last couple of minutes. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. One of the big reasons why I like being out here is because there's moments where I think we've all become vulnerable, and during meetings like this, I sure have. I've shared things that I don't share anywhere else, but it's just great to be in a comfortable environment where we can trust each other, to be able to let our guards down and be able to be vulnerable every now and then. So thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed this meeting. Meeting went really, really well. So I will now, I guess, end the meeting and pass it on to
Yes,
Mimi.
I'm back. Thank you. All right. So we were supposed to be doing some elections. So we are going to do this the best way I know how right now. Okay. What I'm going to do is I am going to name a role. I'm going to name the names that are of people who have applied to run for this role. And what I would like for you to do is to send me a private chat with your vote. Okay. And if there's only one name, just give me a yay or a nay. Okay. So the first thing on my list is El Presidente. And for El Presidente, I have Madam Janet Sellers. So to vote for Janet Sellers, please drop a yes in the chat box to me privately, so that way I can take your vote and we will move on to the next person.
Did you know that Miguel is also in the running for president?
I do not have that on my list. Maybe I do not have an updated chart.
I was in communication with Merritt. Sandra. And she said that Miguel is also in the nomination for president. So
Miguel, is this true?
Yes.
Okay, because on the last document that I received, but keep in mind I am traveling and behind on emails. I think it had you in vice president of public relations slot. So now that things have changed, I have a new announcement. We have both Janet Sellers and Miguel Mendez running for president. So if you all don't mind spending about 15 to 30 seconds to tell us why we should vote for you, really quick, Miguel, since you're unmuted.
Good thing I'm not timing. Vote for me for president because somebody elected or somebody voted for me. Yeah, nominated me, and it is news to me. So maybe make it news to you too. Vote Miguel.
Thank you. Miss Queen Sellers.
Well, I want to be president because I want to be in charge of something and say I was the president of something. And I heard that president is the easiest job because you just preside and support everybody else, which I can do. I've had other officer positions before, and I was relatively overwhelmed. By the way, I nominated Miguel because I think he'd be a cool president, President Miguel. The reason I'd like to be president is that I would like to be more involved and be able to, what's the word? the word, I'm drawing a blank, but it means to delegate. I would like to be able to delegate. I'm on a number of boards and I need to be able to delegate, and I need practice in a safe place with people like Toastmasters. That's my reason. It's a selfish reason. I want to be the best president you've ever had. I want to make Mimi the motivator, number 2, and me number 1, who's the best president. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much. So go ahead and make a vote now. I think it odd that you nominated some competition for yourself.
Well, I think
That's a
Miguel
first.
makes an awesome president, and he's who I thought of, and he didn't nominate himself, and nobody else did.
Yeah,
So to
well,
get
that okay.
just to get the ball rolling and have a little
Okay.
competition.
All right, sounds good. All right. All right, so we're going to move on to the next role, which is VP of Education. And currently there is not a person in that spot. So if there is anyone present who would like to throw their vote in for themselves for VP of Education, please unmute yourself and say aye. Going once, going twice. Don't be scared. It's not as scary as you think. And you always got me to help you. Going 3 times, it's gone. Next on my list is Vice President of Public Relations, and I have Miguel Mendez in that spot as a nominee. Please send your vote to me now. Yes. If you're voting for him, no, for some reason, like you're like, I just don't know about this guy. I don't know if he can tell people about Toastmasters or not. Go ahead and cast your vote now. So all of a sudden, I can't find the ballot. I think the next one on our list is treasurer. And for treasurer, we had myself and Mike Everson on the list. I kind of had a selfish reason like Janet. I was wanting to take more of a background role so that way I could be more supportive of you all and allow some other folks to step up to the plate. So however this goes, it doesn't matter to me. You know, I'm here to support. There is also a blank in the spot for secretary. So if anybody is wanting or willing or desiring to up their secretarial skills, go ahead and drop me a comment or let me know. That would be awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Are you
thank
still
you.
recording? Is the rest of the world going to find out how we do things?
You know what? You are so right. See, that's why I love y'all. That's why I need y'all. Mr. Host, Art, because you now have capabilities. If you can click in the upper left-hand corner where it says live on YouTube, there's